Many people are trying to figure out if racism was just a thing of the past or will it continue to be an issue in today's society. African Americans have been discriminated against, ostracized, and have become vassals to the slave owners. Yet there are some people who are clueless to what racism is. They tend to link it with prejudice or discrimination. I will explain what racism is and why it has developed, what has been done in the past to solve it, and the solution to this problem in hopes that it may trigger success in individuals. When I think of racism, I think of our founding fathers, which relates to how long this has been an issue in our country. Founding fathers such as Washington and Jefferson were slaveholders. However, Washington did free his slaves, but Jefferson did not. In the article Founding Fathers and Slaveholders, it states, Jefferson wrote the words that inspired generations to make heroic sacrifices. All men are created equal. If this was a true statement, then why didn't Jefferson free his slaves? Instead, he kept them because he didn't believe that all were created equal. Jefferson was a racist and wanted to make a profit off of his slaves. When I say the term racism, I mean the belief that all members of each race possesses characteristics or abilities specific to the race, especially so as to distinguish it as an inferior or superior to another race or races. Racist meaning a person who believes that a particular race is superior to another. So how does all of this begin? Racism against African Americans began when African Americans were brought to America, which was around the 17th century. African Americans were kidnapped and brought to America as slaves. Some of these Africans were royalty, and many were literate. African Americans were stripped of their native names and identities. They were beaten and tortured. In many cases, they were lynched and hung from a tree by their white masters. All African Americans were not slaves. Some were free, but discriminatory laws prevented them from owning property or voting. Equality for African Americans was not a factor in the United States. Two types of racism is social and economic. People are judged based on living situations, money status, and much more. Long ago, African Americans were considered to be less superior to the white men. They had no money, instead they made the money for the slave holder. Blacks tended to the land, picked cotton, and catered to the household duties. African Americans were considered different, and racism played roles amongst African Americans in more ways than one, ethnicity being the key role. Racism has been an uphill and downhill battle for African Americans. There are many things that have been tried in the United States to prevent racism, only to have succeeded in some areas and failed in the rest. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution, abolition of slavery, was passed by Congress on January 31st, 1865. December 6, 1865. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States and provides that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. A researcher by the name of Merton Dillon feels that the abolition of slavery was a failure when it came to racism. In the review titled The Legacy of Failure, Abolitionism, and Racism, Merton states the abolitionists wanted to end slavery and eradicate racism, but they failed because they were unable to permanently change racial attitudes. Attitudes were not able to be changed then, and they are not able to be changed now. Looking at racism today, everyone has their own view of the next person. You may not even know a person, but you will have your own opinions or viewpoints, whether they are true or false. We as people do not take the time to get to know others before we judge, and that is one main problem with society. During the Civil Rights Act, which is a legislation in the United States that outlawed discrimination based on one race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, was another attempt on eliminating racism. In the article New Dialogue on the Old Problem of Racism, it quotes, "Perhaps the whole matter of race is resurfacing with such a vengeance because we are into the fine print of the social revolution that took place during the civil rights era. This only expresses how attempts to improve racism have only transpired to events that take place today. Even though the Civil Rights Act was an attempt to outlaw many issues amongst ethnicity groups and cultures, it did not prevail because whites still feel that blacks are not equal to them. After the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1866, a secret society formed in Tennessee called the Ku Klux Klan. Racist whites formed the KKK as a violent reaction to Congress. After a few years, the Klan had numerous branches in every southern state. Klansmen wore white sheets and threatened, beat, and even killed blacks. Congress finally passed the Ku Klux Klan Act in 1871 to curb Klan activity and restore order in the South. In the article, The Survival of Racism, it mentions a popularly elected government, presumably reflecting popular opinion after all, allowed Ku Klux Klan terrorism of black Americans after the Reconstruction. A democratically elected government in Mississippi could never find a white man guilty of killing a black person no matter what the evidence. A democratically elected government operating under the Bill of Rights allowed Chief Justice Taney to write in Dred Scott versus Sanford that blacks were so far inferior that they had no rights, which the white man was bound to respect. The more attempts that were made to decrease racism only added fuel to the fire. Many things were tried, and there was no accomplishment thereafter. Another event which caught my attention was from a website called Do One Thing. It stated End Racism Day, officially known as the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. It is a perfect opportunity for communities to celebrate human unity and diversity of the human race rather than allow our differences to become an excuse for racial separation. This event will allow people of each race to come together despite all our differences and bond. Chad Clausen states, the removal of the Confederate flag from the South Carolina State House. People who think they won something because the flag was taken down has bigger problems. Maybe they think racism has magically disappeared. It didn't. The best thing you can do is ignore racists. They either waste your time or ruin your day. Neither is productive. You should be trying to make a positive impact on the world rather than pointing out the ugly things that you cannot change. I agree with this statement, but it is too good to be true. There are too many ignorant people in the world who take pride in making others feel weak or less than them. Will racism end? I wish. Can we fix it? No. This is an ongoing process that has no means to end. The world will freeze over before this ends. As the years continue to go by, I have noticed that racism is still alive and strong. In many areas, the white race still feel that they are superior to blacks. Blacks are still being called out of their name. When you ask a white person, are they racist? They tend to deny that they are. In the article, We're All Racist, but Racism by White People Matters More, it quotes, they would never, ever use the word racist to describe themselves. Many shootings of young black men and women have happened numerously in the spur of months. The question at hand is, are African Americans being targeted? In the article, It's Time to Call Out Black Racism, it states, since the Ferguson riots, America has been suffering from a violent outbreak of anti-white racism. It's time to call what it is. We as people watch the news only to hear or see another African American has been killed, mistreated, or harmed by a white cop, administrator of the school, or other. In a review titled The Origin of American slavery and racism, Noel states, in order to resolve the issue of the casual priority of racism and slavery, the imprecision of the term racism must be eliminated. Eliminating the term racism alone will not solve the situation because it will not justify another person's reactions. I am one person and I know that the solution I may have to end racism may not work, but I will voice my statement. In order to end racism, I believe that people should learn from their past events and see that with racism, we are corrupting our country. Each person should realize that this grudge that is being held because of ethnicity, economic status, and social aspects is not changing. We should just look at the big picture and realize that we are all equal. If the many things that were tried in the past to eliminate racism did not work, why are we as people still battling each other? Racism is a matter that has grew over the years. It is now time that we as citizens and individuals learn to respect each other. Even though many people have tried to end racism, it's still an ongoing process. All men were created equal, and that is what people should demonstrate and teach to those who don't know. We should no longer judge each other by skin tone, looks, living status, or others. For once, we should see people for who they are and get to know them as a person. The days of justifying people through someone else's eyes are over. Be your own judge.